Takemichi Hanagaki is by far the greatest shonen underdog ever. When it comes to shonen underdogs, or even underdogs in general, I immediately think of characters like Naruto, Asta, or Deku. Characters that started from the complete bottom of their society or world and gradually worked their way up to become the hero they always wanted to be. While these characters are all fine in their own right, I struggle to actually classify them as underdogs. First of all, they all have this unshakable drive, so much so that it should be considered a superpower in its own right. This unnerving determination about them allows them to push through any obstacle with their willpower alone. Secondly, while they may have been very weak initially, they all get some kind of power up, making a complete mockery of the term underdog. Even though after getting this power up they don't immediately rise to the top, it's still a shame that these so-called underdogs receive some kind of power, putting them at an advantage over everyone else in their verse. And unfortunately, I've seen these two things in almost every single supposed underdog story, well, every single underdog story except for Tokyo Revengers. Ken Wakui managed to flip the whole archetype of an underdog shonen protagonist on its head by creating the perfect underdog in Takemichi. Because Takemichi isn't the strongest nor the smartest, and worst of all, he's not even particularly strong-willed. Lacking every other skill in terms of strength and intelligence, you would think that resilience and an unshakable will could be all he could really rely on, but it isn't, at least at first. Where many mangakas focus on leveling up a character in terms of ability or intelligence, mostly strength though, Ken Wakui focuses on leveling up Takemichi's mental fortitude. Ever since Takemichi was a child, his life got messed up. He got affiliated with a gang and he was never the same after. Takemichi became completely subservient to everyone and everything, never striving for greatness of his own. He was permanently hiding in his own shell. Whenever something happened, he immediately apologized whether it was his fault or not, eventually becoming an adult with nothing going on, living in a small, unorganized apartment, working a 9 to 5 at a grocery store. So naturally, when he goes back in time, the only thing fueling him is desperation. He doesn't immediately transform into some super confident, driven person, but what he does have is the knowledge that if he does nothing to change, the people that he cares about the most would die. And with that one small piece of information, he's able to completely change and grow. But as I already mentioned, it's not sudden, it's natural over time, it's natural throughout the story. So when Takemichi first goes back, he acknowledges the fact that he's nothing. The fact that he's not strong-willed, basically the fact that he's just a loser. But what he also understands is that he has to change, so that's what he does. Throughout the story of Tokyo Revengers, something that was probably his worst aspect, his confidence and drive, turns into his own superpower. But the way that it's done throughout the story keeps the progression feeling natural, like it's something that he's earned rather than just being born with some supernatural drive. In fact, later in the series, his confidence and unwillingness to give up is all he has. He becomes a punching bag that cries a lot, challenging people way stronger than him. Speaking of people way stronger than Takemichi, one thing that I think needs to be mentioned about him, and I guess Tokyo Revengers as a whole, is the setting. It's very grounded, there aren't crazy powers, but this aspect actually intensifies the situation rather than dampening it. Because everything is so grounded, we feel the terror that Takemichi feels. Almost like if similar events happened in our own lives, we could fall into the same predicament that Takemichi did. The story of Tokyo Revengers is real and it's brutal. People actually die, whether that be from a stabbing, getting shot, or even just getting hit with a baseball bat. And because of this, everything remains grounded, especially for the main character, Takemichi. I guess to fully explain what I mean by this, I need to put things into perspective. So we have characters like Mikey the Invincible, so far pretty much the pinnacle of strength in the world of Tokyo Revengers. Then there are other strong characters like Hanma, but Mikey can still one-shot Hanma. And even though he loses pretty handedly to Mikey, characters on the level of Hanma and Draken can take out about 50-ish grunts by themselves. And then we have characters like Takemichi who would most likely just lose against one of those grunts. Now, I understand power doesn't mean everything, but that just really helps put into perspective the dire situation that Takemichi is in. If a fight were to ever get super serious off rip, he would instantly lose or possibly even die. But again, power isn't the only thing that determines if a character is a suitable underdog. There are other aspects like fortitude that I've already discussed, but another aspect that I briefly mentioned is intelligence, because Takemichi also isn't the smartest. It's not to say that he's some kind of idiot, but there are characters like Kisaki who with intricate plans can completely outclass Takemichi in every way imaginable. In fact, he was so much smarter to the point that Takemichi would constantly lose even with having knowledge of what was to come in the future. All this to exemplify the point that Takemichi at the beginning of the story was really at the bottom of the barrel. And although he started at the bottom like most underdogs, he grows a lot, but as I mentioned, it was in a way that felt earned and realistic. Takemichi doesn't become a super strong brawler, although he does grow to become slightly above average. His intelligence doesn't skyrocket, although he learns more along his journey. And finally, his bravery isn't unmatched. Takemichi, 200 chapters into the story, is still a character fueled primarily through desperation. He fights never because he wants to, but because he has to. He's still never eager to go into battle, but now he'll more easily convince himself to do it if he has to save something or someone important to him. Now, there's one thing that you may have been thinking, and I do have to concede that Takemichi is actually given a power. But I wouldn't say it's anything too ridiculous to the point of no longer making him feel like an underdog. If you've watched the anime or read the manga, you would know that Takemichi can go back in time by 12 years. When he goes back, he essentially possesses his middle school body, and then to go back forward, all he has to do is shake hands with Naoto. But it's limited to 12 years, and once he's in the past, if something goes wrong or someone dies, he can never change it. And most importantly, there's also someone else who has the same power. And because someone has the same power, everything truly remains balanced. Takemichi's character perfectly blends strength, intelligence, drive, and a unique power to make him the perfect underdog, or dare I say, the perfect protagonist. That's gonna be all for the video. I had a ton of fun putting it together. Been reading Tokyo Revengers for the past week and a half, and it's quickly become one of my favorite series. Follow me on Twitter at TokyoTron. It's always a fun time over there, and don't forget to like and subscribe.